During the preseason polls for last season, the Thunder were projected to be the fifth worst team in the NBA. As we watched, they ended up finishing only one game out of the playoffs, losing out to the Minnesota Timberwolves for the eighth seed, showing that they were much more put together than scouts initially thought. And with the addition of a few players and some notable ones getting cleared to play this season, my question is, why does it feel like some people are sleeping on the Thunder?
Yeah, it's really weird that some people are kind of thinking that, given that, they were widely expected to be a bottom five team last season, like you mentioned. And I think that kind of thought process is carrying over into this season too. People are kind of doubting them. They didn't make the playoffs, even though they did make the play-in tournament, got beat out by Minnesota. And I feel like some people aren't too high on Chet Holmgren or maybe outright forgot about him. And for whatever reason, some people are even calling Shai Gilgeous-Alexander overrated at this point too, which I think is completely ridiculous. But if you take a look around their team, how much youth they have, how much growing youth they have, I think they're a pretty safe bet to not only make the play-in tournament again, but maybe even outright avoid it and make a big playoff push.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because it truly feels like in a not so distant past, we were talking about all the moves Sam Presti had and he was going to make to get all these draft picks, joking and commenting on how the Thunder are going to have an insane young core someday, full of high level prospects. And now it feels like we're finally getting to witness that this season, a little bit last season, but it's kind of even up now this season with Chet's return. And, like I said, we've already had glimpses of that with most of the roster, but now I think we'll be able to witness the full force of the Thunder. And to me, it all starts with Shai. I mean, he's only 25-year-old, and he's been the star of the Thunder squad basically since he was acquired in the Paul George trade, which, I mean, looking back now, I'd say the Thunder probably won that trade by a long shot, considering Paul George hasn't been playing his best basketball due to obvious reasons and stuff, but especially in those key moments for the Clippers. And not to mention, Gallinari and 5 first-round picks on top of that. Can't forget about that. I mean, that's one of the most lopsided trades I've seen in a while. Looking back, of course. Shai's coming off a well-deserved All-NBA first team after averaging 31.4 points, 5.5 assists, 4.8 rebounds, 1.6 steals, and 1 block per game, all in under 36 minutes of playing time per game. And at 6'6", Shai, however you pronounce it, he's easily one of the most shifty elite scorers in the NBA. And how shifty, you ask? Well, he averaged his 31.4 points per game while shooting just under 3 threes per game and making just under 1 3 per game. I mean, the dude has the same efficiency around the rim as like a center or a big man. He's so good at slicing and dicing to get himself those easy buckets or even his teammates those easy shots, and he's probably my favorite player to watch in the league right now.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head by calling Shai a star, because that's what he is at this point. He is an established star player, and maybe even on his way to becoming a legitimate superstar if he's not there already. Very reliable scorer, definitive number one option for them, and definitely a guy you can build around. They're only getting better, and he's only getting better, and given that he's one of the oldest quote-unquote guys in their team at 25, that's a pretty good outlook for their future. Other than him though, because it's definitely not only him, they got Josh Giddey on the rise, Jalen Williams, or J-Dub if you prefer, one of my favorite young players in the entire league, and then like you mentioned before, they will be getting back Chet Holmgren, and he could be a really good sneaky pick for Rookie of the Year. He looked dominant defensively during Summer League both last year and this year, averaged 3.5 blocks per game in Summer League, and really looked like the defensive anchor that they've desperately needed. Like last year, they didn't have a true center all year. They kind of had Mike Muscala for a little bit, power forward center hybrid. Played a lot of Jeremiah Robinson Earl at center. He's more of a combo forward, if anything. And they haven't had a real center, even though that's kind of a diminishing term in today's modern NBA. But at the very least, Chet Holmgren will be a defensive anchor, rim protector for them. And I think he'll be a perfect fit. Given that the Thunder, they're all in on the modern style of the NBA, Chet Holmgren, he really could be their missing piece. Like I said, they don't play the older style traditional big man. They want a mobile center who can not only switch on defense, block shots, but then hit the 3-ball too. And while that will be a little bit of a work in process for Chet, he will be able to get there eventually, at least very likely. And if he ever can, especially this season, I think he'll be everything that they're looking for, and that would really be the key to unlocking their playoff run like this season, for me anyway.
Before we continue, I just wanted to take a few seconds to talk about and invite you to join our NBA Discord server. Our JSM NBA server is full of hundreds of people who love everything NBA. Do you like instant news updates around the league, NBA memes, talking stats, or even live chatting with others during games? The JSM NBA server has got you covered, plus so many more things to do and see. Come check out the JSM NBA server for free. We'd love to see you in there. The link will be in the description below. Now let's get back to the video. Yeah, I mean, you're exactly right. If we look at the Timberwolves game specifically to get, into the playoffs, I mean, it mostly came down to the Thunder having a lack of size that could compete and defend against Cat and Gobert. And, I watched the game. I'm sure you watched the game. That's pretty much what it was. And Chet's going to elevate that to a whole nother level. And I think you're right. I think that he doesn't really have the muscle and the size to be, the guy guarding the post-up big man. I think they're going to let him kind of run around. He's going to block shots. He's going to be that versatile. He's going to be all over. And yeah, like you said, 3.5 blocks during Summer League. Most of that was just kind of like a freelance. He could kind of go around, block shots. He's really good at doing that. He did that in high school. Obviously, a lot more freedom in high school when you're kind of that kind of a talent. But, there'll be issues with the bigger centers. But Chet can space the floor, and just like in modern NBA, he's really good at kind of the way that everyone's going that way too. And his perimeter scoring threat obviously makes more room down for, this Thunder team really likes to slash and score, and Chet will make a ton of room for that down low, bringing the other big guys out. And his offensive and defensive playmaking will be huge for the Thunder this year. And as long as he stays healthy, he'll probably be in the race for Rookie of the Year too.
Yeah, like I said before, he'll be a really good dark horse pick for that. And then I like how you mentioned you kind of referred how they have an up-tempo, slashing, dicing, and cutting offense. They definitely are. They were third in pace per game while somehow having the fourth lowest turnover rate last season as a very young team. And there's really no better sign as a young team for your offense going forward when you're that efficient while playing that quick, and then adding a perfect fitting center to that too. I mean, I love the outlook for their offense and their defense, and again, with how young they are, there's going to be internal growth there too. And in my opinion, the biggest internal growth they could have would be from Jalen Williams, J-Dub, not Jalen Williams. In my opinion, he would have been Rookie of the Year if not for Paolo Banchero. Or if you only look at the second half of the NBA season, I think he probably would have got it too. And from January 1st, he shot 52.5% from the field and 39% from three after that time. And he really appears to be fully capable of becoming a second option if he's not there already, or even like a 1B to Shai's 1A. I think they'll be a really good duo within even the next 1 to 2 years here. Jalen Williams looking that good already. And given another year of growth here, he could already be prepared to be that second option and kind of give them what they need for their offense. Shai not having to put up 30, 35 every night for them to be outscoring their opponent. J-Dub, he can definitely fill in there too, drop 20 to 30, and it really could be by this season already. I'm really, really high on him, so I'll be looking out for him. Of course, Josh Giddey as well. He should be taking a good jump this year too. Legitimate point forward, big guy, 6'8", pretty decent defender too, and just really loving his outlook for playmaking ability. Again, taking some of the burden off Shai so he doesn't have to be the primary scoring option and playmaker at times too. Between Giddey and Jalen Williams, I think they'll be doing a lot more for the team this season.
Agreed. Those two are going to be big factors in their push forward. And, Jalen Williams, talked about his offensive side. I mean, he's 6'6" shooting guard / forward that he ended last year on a huge tear. But here's the thing where I think that people are going to be underestimating him, and it's going to be on the defensive side. And I think mixing him and Chet in the same, lineup will be really scary for a lot of teams. And I know that comparison may have sounded kind of weird, comparing a 6'6" guy with a 7'1" guy, but Jalen Williams has a 7'2" wingspan, which he uses really well to clog up lanes and just obviously provide the Thunder more of a defensive threat. Mixed in with Chet, I mean, they're going to clog it up well. And to me, it's so weird to think that J-Dub and SGA are the same size, because when you watch them on the floor, Jalen Williams seems so much bigger, and he just has like a bigger play style. And I know he weighs a bit more too, but he just plays as a really good slasher, great forward role, and he can even hit spot up three balls too if needed. And he's a lot more versatile on both ends than people think. And a lot of it's like you say, because it was towards the end of the year where he kind of really stepped out of his shell. And he's going to get better too as he goes. Like you said, he's already at that level or just about at that level to be that too. And same with Josh Giddey, like you said. I think that this season we're going to see Giddey take a step forward in his assist game. And I mean, he averaged 17, 8, and 6 last season with 6 assists. And I think that his rebounding and his assists will probably take a little swap this season with Chet. But regardless, I think that they're both going to be great players. They're going to be big assets to SGA to help make a push. And yeah, I'm excited to see how it goes.
Yeah, and I really think a big factor of that will be their defense. You talked about Jalen Williams and his huge 7'2" wingspan. They got height and length all over the court, especially height now with Chet Holmgren back. And I'm really high on their defense between Lou Dort, J-Dub, Shai, Holmgren, even Kenrick Williams, and maybe even Victor Oladipo, given that they did acquire him, and if he can stay healthy, they have a really
He's
good...
home.
Yeah, he is home. But put them all together and they could have a really good defensive unit. And given that they're already the 13th rated defense last season, you have them jump into the top 10, maybe even top 8. That's pretty scary already. You already know they have plenty of offense, and even though they're the 16th rated offense last season, I kind of felt like they're better than that. And, more internal growth, that they're going to develop offensively. I think it's a lot harder to build a good defensive team compared to a really good and efficient offensive team, especially in the modern NBA. And I feel like the Thunder already have that covered. And with all their defensive talent, they just feel really well-rounded to me. And then with all their youth, they're going to keep growing both offensively and defensively, hopefully too. They're just shaping up to be a really solid team with so much promise for the future, both short-term and long-term. And kind of with that in mind, what are your final expectations for them? Maybe their ceiling, again, where you think they might fall, or just in general, what are you looking for them to show this season?
When you look at the Western Conference and kind of see the moves everyone's been making, I think a realistic ceiling for them would be the 5th or 6th seed in the West. I personally like to believe that they are not going to be playing in a play-in tournament this year, that they're going to be seeded, they're going to be watching at home, they're going to be preparing, they're going to be, working on the stuff they got to work on. I think that it'd be very reasonable to expect them to be in that 7, 8, 9, 10 area as well. And, of course, everyone's staying healthy as always, but I think that would be my ceiling. And I don't think that that's a hot take by any means necessary with the path that SGA has been taking and Josh Giddey, with Chet coming back, Jalen Williams, and the rest of the roster. And I think that's totally attainable.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I don't think anything about that was unreasonable at all. You can make an argument for practically a good 8 to 10 teams in the West if they all would stay healthy to be able to avoid the play-in tournament, possibly. But in my opinion, with all the depth, youth, and how well-rounded they are, and on the come-up they are too, the Thunder, I kind of agree with that too. I see them finishing higher than 8th. I'm not sure I put them in the top 5, even though I really do think they'll be a great regular season team. I think it'll be tough for them to get above Denver, Sacramento, Memphis, and maybe even Phoenix in regard to record-wise, but I think it'll be a really tight race. Like, I wouldn't be shocked even if they didn't get in the top 5, which, again, I'm not sure they will, if they'd only be about 1 to 2 games back of it. I think it'll be a really tight race again this year. And the Thunder, they're going to prove a lot of people wrong who are doubting them in terms of not making the playoffs. I think in that regard, they're going to be a lock. They will make the playoffs. Whether or not they actually go beyond round 1, I'm not entirely sure. But even that would be a step forward. Make it to the playoffs, getting their young talent legitimate playoff experience. They got a little bit of postseason experience with the play-in tournament, and again, you kind of referred to it too. They felt the shame or whatever you would call it of having to go home and watch the playoffs from home, and now they want to get in there. And given everyone they have back with Chet Holmgren, add a little more draft talent to their team with the Case and Wallace, and again, the internal growth, I think they can make a real playoff push. I'm really high on the Thunder. I think they are going to prove a lot of people wrong this season.